Okay, the next two chapters are Reading Log 15, Chapter 18, and Chapter 19. What I want you to do is describe the three magic users, Oriole, Zenus, and Aldemar. 2 sentences on each, you're perfect. Okay, Chapter 18 is titled Calling in the Reinforcements. I didn't want to call off the search entirely, just in case. So I ordered 2 new pairs of guards to take over while the original searchers rested. No rest for me, of course. I knew how far I'd get if I sent a messenger, to ask Wolfgar at the crack of dawn, no less, to make a 2-hour trip to Fairfield to help me. So I headed back all by myself. It was eerie riding my horse across the darkened countryside while the world slept, except for the occasional barking dog or an owl which swooped so close I almost had a heart attack. The wind whispering in the trees and brushed against my arms startled me over and over. I arrived at the castle about just the same time as sunrise. I had made it to the second day. Alleluia. Penrod must have talked some of the guards into remaining because 2 of them guarded the raised drawbridge. The trouble was, they didn't recognize me. They insisted I was a beggar and told me to come back in the morning when the gates were open. I argued calmly, then forcibly, then irritably. Then I yelled at them, "Get Captain Penrod now! He'll tell you who I am." "Sorry, no, can't do that," they said. "Captain's asleep. Come back later." I was so tired and frustrated and angry. I didn't know what to do, so I screamed. I screamed and screamed and screamed like a teenage victim in a cheesy horror movie, hoping to wear them down or to wake up someone who would verify I was who I said I was. It sure scared my horse, and the castle's many dogs began to howl. Screaming continually is actually a very tiring thing. In less than a minute, my throat was suffering, and at about 2 minutes, I could tell my volume was definitely going down. After 3 minutes, Sister Mary Ursula strolled out from the bushes. She was wrapped in 2 towels, and only 2 towels. One around her and the other turban style around her head. Believe me, under normal circumstances, a 70-year-old nun dressed in 2 towels is not a welcome sight, but I was delighted to see her. "Such a fuss," she said, shaking her head at me. "If you had cleansed your soul with me this past night, you wouldn't feel this way, I'm sure." The guards called down to her, "Be careful of the crazy girl, sister." "That's all right, I know her." So they lowered the drawbridge and let the 2 of us in. I glowered at the guards as we passed. People in this world, I was coming to learn, were only able to think of themselves if it inconvenienced me. As I walked toward the castle, I heard a guard give the order for the bridge to be raised. A few minutes later, he repeated the order, and then again. I went back to see what's the matter. "It's stuck," the guard manning the mechanism said. "How's it supposed to work?" I asked. He showed me the cogwheels and the chain that led the door down so that people could cross over it and raise it for security at night when the castle was under attack. I'm not an engineer, but it was immediately obvious that the drawbridge's natural position was up, not down. The counterweights had to be lifted to lower the bridge so people could get in, which I guess makes sense from the defensive point of view. You don't want the bridge sticking down and open if the invading army is running towards you, screaming and waving weapons. All of which meant the bridge should be easier to raise than to lower. The exact opposite of what seemed to be the case now. Just what I need, I thought, with the barbarians on our doorstep. Could it have been sabotaged? I asked as the guards fiddled with the mechanism. I don't see how. Nothing's wrong here. The chain is fine and there's nothing blocking there. Except it won't work, I said. Except it won't work, he agreed. It's like something is holding the bridge down. The trouble was, we could plainly see nothing was. The bridge wasn't caught on anything, either on the ditch that surrounded the castle or on the far side where the drawbridge lay. Other guards came to see if we could do better, 2 pulling at a time, though the first guard said it wasn't supposed to be a matter of strength. You should be able to do it, he said. He probably meant even a weakling like you, but I said, yeah, like King Arthur being the only one who could pull this sword out of the stone. What's this Arthur king of? The guard asked. And why did he keep his sword in a stone? Never mind, I said, but I tugged anyway. And the bridge started to come up. Easily. Some of the guards who had come to see and give their advice backed away suspiciously, but most cheered and congratulated me. Strange, I thought. But since it ended well, I wasn't going to complain. What the heck was that? They took over raising the bridge the rest of the way, having no trouble now, and I went to find Wulfgar. In the castle, the servants who were already up and working, preparing breakfast, opening the windows to air out the rooms, heating water for the laundry. The royal family was not up yet. I banged on Wulfgar's door. No answer. I banged again. There was a sleepy mumble. Probably he told me to go away. I kept on banging. The servants who had been in the hall ran for cover. Wulfgar flung open the door. He had on a nightshirt, and his hair was all askew, and his eyes were still puffy from sleep. What is the meaning of this? He growled. Knocking on a door? I asked innocently. That's an ancient custom among our people and the world, signifying, please let me in. Wulfgar drew his lips back from his teeth, but retained human form. I need your help, I told him. To get the treasury back? Ask fantastic, remarkable, wow, imagine that, abbess. Was that the way I sounded? I need you. I could see that he was winding himself up for a sarcastic comeback, so I added, and your special talents? He raised an eyebrow and waited. In this lifetime, I hadn't seen him turn into a wolf. I said, I understand you were raised elsewhere. Yes. He gave a definitely wolfish grin. I need you to track down Houghton. No, he said. He stole our treasury. Raise our taxes. No time. Plus, of course, that would make the peasants even surlier. Please, I said. He closed the door in my face. I untied the magic ring from my makeshift necklace. I banged on the door some more, and this time when it flew open, I said, take this ring. Wulfgar's eyes grew wide and frightened. No doubt he had no desire to take the ring, yet he found his hand moving to take it. He knew he was bespelled. He took the ring and slipped it onto his finger. I said, first, I need you to protect me from harm. His expression didn't become any less murderous, but I knew that now I was safe from him and from others while he was beside me. Next, I want you to come back to Fairfield with me and help me find where Houghton has hidden the treasure. Wulfgar stepped out into the hall. You may get dressed first, I told him. I figured men can always dress faster than women, so there wasn't time for me to get into something more practical, even if I knew where to get it. Sure enough, Wulfgar wasn't long. He wore such a fierce expression that the castle dogs whined and slunk away from us, their tails between their legs. The guards lowered the drawbridge again for us to cross. I called out for them to keep the bridge up, even during the day, in case of an attack. After we'd gone over, I heard the guards yell that we were clear. No sound of a raising bridge from behind us. Raise the bridge, the guard yelled. Nothing. Well, I couldn't close it from this side. Something else for me to look into when I got back. In Fairfield, people from the town had gathered at the burned and tumbled remains of the church, drawn by the presence of the wagons and the squad of the guards. Seeing that the wagons were empty and the guards were mostly lazing around, I gathered that there was still no sign of the treasure. I led Wolfgar through the mini maze of rubbled church to the first set of the catacombs. Both pair of men I had set to search were there, along with the men assigned to make torches. The searchers started explaining before I said a word that they had just come back from replacing torches. I figured I returned faster than they anticipated, and I had caught them taking a break. I had been gone for 4 hours, which was probably how long their break had lasted. That's all right, I said. Stay here. Prince Wolfgar and I will search now. Taking a torch, I led Wolfgar through the third room, the one where the catacomb mazes started. I want you to find Rodon's trail, I said. We will go together. Try not to lose me. I had another thought. And if we do get separated, I want you to come looking for me right away. You are to not let any harm befall upon me. You already said that about no harm, Wolfgar said. Just reminding you. Wolfgar didn't say any magical words that I heard. I didn't see him make any magical looking gestures. He simply suddenly shrank, fell forward, and transformed into a wolf. Too late, it occurred to me that the ring was bound to fall off at the toe of his paw. Would that stop the spell? But the ring kept hold, even when Wolfgar padded on all 4 feet to the left-hand door. He walked at a steady pace that kept me at a breathless half-run. If you slow down, he'll slow down too, because you commanded him not to lose you, I told myself. But I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing that I couldn't keep up. There wasn't a pattern to our path, and there were too many intersections with most of the rooms similar to be distinctive. Sometimes the dead bodies had mummified, sometimes they were simply bones. Sometimes the bones were scattered on the floor, sometimes they were mostly in their carved wall niches. The wooden shelves were only for those rooms closest to the entrance. We went through one section where there was underground stream must have passed near, for several of the rooms were damp, and in 2 of them we had to wade through puddles that came up to my ankles. There has also been a cave-ins in several of the rooms, which I sincerely hoped had happened a long time ago. Long after I had given up trying to make sense of our direction, Wolfgar suddenly stopped. He slowed down 2 or 3 times before to sniff at the tunnels, but now he suddenly reverted back to human shape. What? I asked. Counselor Rodon, he said. I lowered my voice to the faintest of whisper, just in case Rodon hadn't heard us coming or seen the light from the torches. Where? I asked, because there were 2 possible doorways, plus the one we were closest to, which had collapsed. Though surely Rodon wouldn't have wanted to make his way over that pile each time he came, I thought. Imitating me, Wolfgar whispered dramatically, There. For a moment I thought that Rodon was in the room beyond the pile of stones and dirt where the doorway had collapsed, but then I saw a foot that was sticking out of that pile. the foot that was neither bone nor mummified flesh. Proof that cave-ins happened as recently as within the last day. Do you think he's dead? I asked. No, I think he's just napping. He could just be injured, I protested. Without answering, Wolfgar scrambled up the pile of collapsed catacomb, ignoring the body. He had to duck to squeeze through what was left of the opening. I was going to say, not so fast, but when I got to the top, I could see into the next room. Wolfgar hadn't moved on, but stood among dozens of sacks that were stacked on top of one another. Beneath my feet, protruding from this end of the cave-in, was a small hand-pulled cart, onto which several of the bundles had been loaded. The force of the cave-in had knocked some of the bags off, and one had split open, scattering gold coins, which glinted in the light of my torch. He must have been trying to move the gold out of here, Wolfgar said. He might even have been heading to one of the seaports to hire a boat and leave the country. I'm guessing he rushed too much. And that was my guess, too. That Houghton had accidentally smacked into the doorway with his overloaded cart, not realizing that this entire area was weakened by the moisture of the nearby water. That was something for me to remember and be careful of. All right, I said. This time we need to go slowly so that I can make scratches with my stone to mark the way for the guards to find their way back here. I used the double arrows, one after the other, to identify the correct way. We'll let the men dig this out, gather the money, return to the castle in the wagons at whatever speed they can make. But the two of us won't wait. We should get back as soon as we can to check on the situation with the barbarians. Wolfgar used the toe of his boot to poke at the stones covering Houghton. One of us hasn't had breakfast, he grumbled. Even with all the trouble Houghton had caused, I refused to let Wolfgar snack on him. Neither of us has, I assured him, tugging on his arms. Don't you even dare think about it. Even magic can't control thinking, he said wistfully. By the time I had carefully marked out the route and given instructions on how many men to have carrying the treasure out and how many men to have guarding the treasury that had to be carried out so that the people of Fairfield wouldn't walk away with it, I had a crisis of faith. Not over my trailblazing abilities or even my troops' mental capacities, but over how hard it would be for the average guardsman to remain honest in face of so much money. They could easily decide that the kingdom's treasure, divided among 50 of them, was more money per guard than any of them was ever likely to see again. Wolfgar, I ordered, you'll have to stay behind. Keep an eye on the men. Make sure they don't take any of the money for themselves. Then help guard the convoy on the way back. I haven't even broken my fast yet, Wolfgar complained again. Well, none of us had. Send a few men into town to buy provisions for everyone, I said. I knew Wolfgar was only cooperating because of the ring compelled him to do so, so I specified. Don't be excessive with spending the money, but pay a fair price and return to the castle as quickly as you can in safety. I couldn't think of any loopholes I had left, which didn't mean Wolfgar wouldn't find one. And no plotting against me, I added. Wolfgar saluted and then spat on the ground, just barely missing my toes. By the time I had made the 2-hour trip back home, I had a strong suspicion that lunch was probably over. I could see that eventually they had gotten the bridge up without me, though now they had to lower it once more. Captain Penrod this time was standing on the castle wall as I approached. I waved and held up one sack of gold I had brought with me in case any skeptical guards needed proof that money had been found. Penrod returned my wave, and I heard a cheer from the guards as word of my success was passed. My horse clattered over the drawbridge, and the eager guards gathered around. I tossed the bag to Penrod and said, "That's the first of it. The rest is about a half a day behind." Penrod handed the bag over to one of his lieutenants and helped me dismount. I had a sore butt from all the riding I had done. Lady Bliss's red gown was stiff and stinky with sweat, not to mention tattered and muddy, and I had absolutely no sleep from last night and no breakfast this morning. We watched as the guards were unable to re-raise the bridge. "Any idea what that's all about?" I asked Penrod. He shook his head. "They say it's as though the bridge is weighed down, but that the weight goes away after a little while." "That little while could be the death of us in case of an enemy attack, I warned. Can a new mechanism be made?" Penrod passed that down to his men as an order. "How are things going?" I asked him. "Not badly," he answered, but so hesitantly I knew he wasn't telling the truth. "You might as well tell me now," I said. "The messengers you sent to find the barbarian camp returned." Because of his dismal expression, I guess, the barbarians didn't accept our offer of peace. "The messengers returned without their heads." That sounded like a definite no to me. "Now what?" "All right," I said. "I absolutely need to lie down, just for a bit. I'm so tired I can barely walk straight, much less think straight." "Oh," Penrod said. "Oh, what?" "It's just that the meeting has already started." "What meeting?" "With the magic users, Aldemar, Oriel, and Zenus." I was pleased to hear that they arrived, but who are they meeting with? I asked. "Queen Adriana," Penrod said. "I guess there wasn't time for a nap, quick or otherwise." So, the next chapter will describe the magic users, so you can use that one for your reading log. 15.